Hello, hello. Welcome everyone to a holiday edition of Piano Tech Radio Hour. So we'll call this the turkey edition, I guess. In fact, we have today some Canadian guests, which is appropriate because I don't think they necessarily celebrate Thanksgiving. Although maybe maybe that could be our first topic of conversation. What is Thanksgiving like in Canada? I'm sure there's a little bit of spillover. But I'm guessing that I don't really know, but I'm guessing the Canadians have a better long-term relationship with the Native Americans than in the US. I don't know. That's an interesting topic to cover.
They got it started early.
Got it started earlier. Okay,
They got it started early, yeah. But then we had turkey dinner yesterday, so we get that too.
Okay, nice. Well, welcome everyone. People are starting to kind of trickle in here still. We got a good turnout actually, given the holiday. And so I will give the general intro. We're streaming out to Facebook and YouTube as well. So hello out there. We tend to log off the session from the streaming about 15 minutes in, but you know what, we'll leave it on the whole time today. Although we will probably invite folks to join us in the call here with a registration link if you want to come say hi. But yeah, what is this? What are we doing here today? If this is your first time here, this is Piano Tech Radio Hour. And what happens is we gather here every Saturday to meet with and learn from the most fascinating and knowledgeable folks in the piano world, including manufacturers, rebuilders, musicians, makers of other instruments, and of course, piano techs. Our mutual goal is to become better at our craft, to help each other, and to create an ever more musical world together. Piano Tech Radio Hour is brought to you by Piano Technicians Masterclasses, an online learning resource that brings you cutting-edge instruction from piano industry masters without leaving your home. You can find out more at pianotechniciansmasterclass.com. And I will do a quick screen share here. We do have a upcoming masterclass next week. So registration needs to happen for that if you would like to join us. But yeah, let me do a screen share so you can see what's up with that one. Clear some things out of the way with the Zoom. Okay. So this is Larry Lobel, a great member of our community. He's going to be doing a tuning pin symposium. We'll put that registration link into the chat as well in a moment. As you can see, we have an early bird price still going now, if you want to try to save a little bit. And Larry's going to talk about, tuning pins, a full symposium on tuning pins. A very interesting topic that we all have to deal with on a daily basis. He wants to talk about the tightness of tuning pins, what kind of remedies might be available, and so on and so forth. And just a general discussion of the magic and struggle that we have with tuning pins. So check that out. I'll put the link in the chat. You can register now and you should be able to save a little bit. See our early bird 2 price is going to be on until the 28th. Of the month, and you can catch that still. You can still catch that within 21 hours if you want to register. And of course, if you're an existing subscriber, no problem. It's just a quick $5 registration fee. And if you kind of wish you were kind of pre-subscribed to all of these and only had to pay a simple registration fee, then you could just subscribe to monthly, and the next one you'll have on your list. We can't get you in on this one because the cutoff sort of passed, but yep, you can still attend for just $200. So check that out. I'll put the link in the chat, and we're looking forward to it. So links in the chat for that. I'll also send that out to our viewers online in Facebook and YouTube. And now I will introduce our guest for the day. So today we have Wayne Ferguson, and he has brought with him Megan, and I'm going to let them introduce themselves. We're kind of leaving the view here. I don't know I did see some guys who had their cameras on and then turned them off. You feel free to turn your camera back on at least for a moment or two. Megan's new to the whole session. As you'll learn, she's kind of new to the piano industry. So we want to kind of show her, hey, there's some faces out here and some support going on. And then in a moment, hey, Carl, how's it going? Hey, Paul. Yeah, and then in a moment, we'll spotlight ourselves so we can get into the conversation and you guys can focus on the conversation. But today we're basically going to be talking about the process of getting into the piano industry, especially being a piano technician in this particular moment. A lot has happened since the piano was invented. A lot has happened since the sort of surge in pianos happening like in the 80s and things like that. I mean, it's been a roller coaster and a lot of changes, and in particular, the educational landscape has went through quite a bit. And so we'll talk a bit about Megan and her educational journey. She's sort of just getting into the picture. And so, yeah, let's get into it. Thanks for turning on your cameras, guys. I'll spotlight us and then we'll get the conversation started. And I'll let Megan and of course our good friend Wayne introduce themselves. So why don't we just start with Wayne? Wayne, you want to just give a quick overview for people of yourself who may not be familiar with you, and then we'll kick it out over to Megan to say hello and give us a little introduction on her. Who are you? Who are you, Wayne Ferguson? What is your deal?
Piano technician, registered piano technicians guild. Been in the business since I started the course at Georgia College in 84, 85, 2 years. Ted Sebel was my teacher. A lot of people know who he is. And then from there, I started in business more or less about 85, 86, and just went at it full tilt. I live in Toronto. My home and shop is in Pickering. I just need a larger home for my workshop. Drive downtown every day. I do most of the main concert halls, main venues in Toronto. How I end up meeting Megan is I went to Royal Conservatory of Music, Kerner Hall, and to tune for Chick Corea. And Megan was working at
just working backstage.
And I think at one point we just had different conversations, and then she blurted out this question. Would you be interested? I can't remember what you said to me.
Well, that was the first time we met. We were just talking about piano tuning, piano technology. And at that point, I didn't really know what it was, but we had a connection because my background is in music production. I was a touring artist for about 8 years. And your daughter works in the Canadian music industry.
That's right.
So we were talking about that connection.
Yeah.
And then it wasn't until I think like a year or two later that I wrote you on Instagram and asked, like, would you be able to help, or, just kind of asking questions about piano technology. So that's how we first connected through that Chick Corea show. But it wasn't until after that I inquired about learning more about it.
Yeah, I think that message I actually missed. And then you
who checks their Instagram messages?
Yeah, and then my daughter said, "Hey, you didn't reply to my friend." I said, "So I didn't know who." What? And then she told me, so that's how that we sort of reconnected.
Mm-hmm.
But I think at the time but I can't remember what I said, because what I will say is, as technicians, some of us have people that will ask us, "How do I get into this? Will you teach me, or how do I learn?" It happens all the time. And now all I knew is that I didn't have time to take on an apprentice or be able to do any teaching at all. It was just too busy. So it's a matter of, and what courses were available at the time. So you did some research, I think.
I did, yeah. And unfortunately, I think since 2015, there's been nowhere to study in Canada. There used to be a course at Western University. Yeah, in London. But I think that ended in 2015. So there hasn't been anywhere, any sort of institution to study piano technology for 6 or 7 years. So I am currently studying at North Bennett Street School in Boston, and that's why I'm here in Toronto because of the American Thanksgiving. So I've got a couple days off, and I came home, and Wayne kindly let me into his shop and take a look around, and that's why I'm here today.
Cool. And we've been to your
Lucky
shop
you.
before a little bit, Wayne. That was Carl chiming in. He said, what'd you say, Carl? Lucky you?
Lucky you, of course.
I know, it's great. I'm so excited.
Yeah, Wayne's got a lot to share, and a great workshop there. He's made a lot out of a little space. We've seen some really cool stuff, and we've seen his house packed with pianos as well, which is pretty fun. Tell us a little bit more, Megan, about your background. You said you were in the music industry. You were touring musician or touring as part of a musical team or something. And yeah, it's an interesting step to do like a career change. Like, how long were you in your pre-existing career? Are you going to continue with it? Are you kind of making a full shift? What's the process there?
So I have been involved in music in some capacity throughout my whole life. I have a degree in classical voice. I'm originally from Newfoundland and Labrador, which is a small province off the east coast of Canada. And after graduating university, I completely pivoted from classical music, and I started a band, like a synth pop band, and toured Canada from 2011 to 2017. And
All right, let's plug the band so we can check out the music.
well, the band is broken
Sounds
up
fun.
now, but
Well, you got some recordings up somewhere now.
there's recordings. Yeah,
What's
we were called RepRT, so REPARTEE.
Nice.
Yeah.
I heard it just FYI. So I just heard this a radio story. I think it was on This American Life podcast, right? And it was a story of this guy. He had this punk band, when he was younger, and then he stopped doing it, right? Like, he just had fun. He was doing the band, and he was like a mortgage broker or something like that. And then all of a sudden he meets someone, and he's like, he tells him that he was in this band, and the guy goes, "Oh, like, you were in that band? Oh my gosh, like you're really popular. I think it was in like Japan or something like that." And so he found out like his records were like going for like a couple $100, like on eBay or something like that, or on some online marketplaces, and ended up deciding to go like tour playing the music that he used to play. So anyways, all that to say, hey, you never know, right? Like your music might just get big under, while you're not looking at some point. So anyways.
You can find Megan on Instagram at Meg Warren Music.
Yes, Meg.
Perfect.
At Meg Warren Music. So yeah.
That's
Yeah.
my Instagram. But one of the reasons why I wanted to pivot is because being a touring musician, and then actually after I toured for a while, I went into music production, and I did some studying mixing engineering and a little bit of audio engineering, and was working on my own stuff and some stuff for other artists as well. And then the pandemic hit, and that was a big factor into, it was a bunch of different things. I think I kind of, the pandemic maybe moved my decision along a little faster. But it is difficult. The music industry is a difficult industry. And I didn't realize that piano technology was its own thing until January of last year. Or this year, not even a year ago. And I just assumed, like, coming from the live music background, that piano techs were similar to guitar techs who, like, unless you're a luthier or something, it's not really like you don't study to become one. You kind of, in my experience anyway, you kind of just learn it as you go. And most guitar techs have a guitar playing background and that kind of thing. So that's what I thought that piano technology was like as well. And then when I started looking into it, I was like, wow, this is just a whole world. And I was fortunate to reach out to a couple of technicians around Toronto and around Ontario who were really helpful and told me all about their experience and what their day-to-day looked like. And the more I learned about the field, the more it appealed to me. And like my coming from production and kind of working in studios and stuff, I like the idea of working with my hands and using my ears a lot. I mean, that's basically what mixing engineering is. So there was a lot of the skills that I had kind of worked on in the music industry that seemed like were applicable to this world as well. And yeah, I just kind of wanted to switch and do something that wasn't quite so difficult, like, you know, existing in the music industry, specifically in the pandemic. It was kind of a like just a little kick to kind of look outside and see what else was out there.
Sure. Yeah. And well, it's good to have you in this community. You know, we're often, you know, we're learning about how to take care of pianos and things like that. And, you know, people's specific roles and how things are going. But then we're also tend to reflect a little bit on the state of the industry, where things are going and how you build a career. So it's a good place, I think, for you to hang out. You know, I think one of the trends that I believe in, you know, is that number one, things are moving more and more towards the high end, so that if you want to be a piano technician, you used to be able, you literally used to be able to go into somebody's house, play their piano. Not that I did this, right? But people would get away with this, just play their piano and tell them that it was tuned and get paid for it, just because it was such a prevalent profession. Pianos, there's a lot of demand for it. And the more and more we see, like, the people who aren't taking it that seriously, right? Or they just have a little bit of knowledge under the belt, it's not really probably for them. But if you start to aim for like the high end maintenance of the instrument, really understanding it deeply, it's actually a very fertile landscape. And that's just because, you know, there's fewer of those individuals. And so that expertise is much more, you know, valuable nowadays than it was in the past. So
well, North Bennett Street will be your introduction. There's no better way to start a career than North Bennett Street.
Yeah. North Bennett Street is a great school.
Well, that's what got my attention, is because when people ask me how to become a technician, I give them a little bit of information, but you know, but when I heard that she decided to go to North Street Bennett, that got my attention, because that makes all the difference in the world doing that. It's huge, and I'm happy you've done that. Yeah.
Thanks. Me too.
Yeah.
And so at this point, you know, you're just early on in your journey at North Bennett Street, right? How much time have you spent there? How much is remaining? I know there's like there's like 2 levels of courses you can do, sort of like the number 1 and number 2. Where are you at in the journey, and how's it going so far?
So I just started in September. So I'm only like less than 3 months in now. And I'm doing the basic technology program, basic piano technology. And then I would love to do the advanced piano technology next year. But I just, honestly, I can't afford it. So I just kind of looked at what I could do in the time that I have. And the basic piano technology program was, to me, like the most efficient way of starting as a piano technician. I know people that have done the mentoring thing and the apprenticeship thing, and like, you know, from what I can tell, there's no right or wrong way to learn and to enter into the industry. But I was looking for something that was kind of concentrated and hands-on. And I had just heard so many wonderful things about North Bennett Street School. And like I said, the more I looked into it, the more I realized that it was the right choice for me. And it is very expensive. So I was kind of like, I'll apply, and if I get in, then I'll figure out what I can do. And they have been generous with financial aid, and I think that, you know, that's listed on their website. I don't want to speak from Bennett Street School. I don't know, but I know that's something that has been really helpful to me. Yeah, I have, like, I just feel so thankful that I found that program. I love going to school every day. It's like such an in-depth program. The instructors are so knowledgeable, and they're so helpful and want you to do well. And, you know, there's 15 of us in the class, and there are 17 practice rooms, and most of the practice rooms have more than one piano in them. So you just get so much hands-on experience. Like, we tune every day, and the school is open on Saturdays and Sundays. So you can go in and tune and practice, and you know, you can work on the workshop, and it's just like, I don't know if there's any other circumstance in my life where I would have been afforded this exposure to this kind of work. So I'm just loving every minute of it. I wish I could do second year, you know, maybe down the road, I don't know. But at this point, I'm just doing the basic program, and it's been incredible so far.
Cool. And while you're talking here, I'm pulling up I have a little tour that we did. So we came to North Bennett Street School several years ago before the pandemic. And an alumni of the school, David Stanwood, did a class there. And then while we did the class, we got to do a little tour of the facilities with Lou Delbaney, and that was pretty awesome. So I found the link, at least, of the video on Facebook of that. So if anybody's interested, you can check that out. You know, it's at a later time, just copy it and check that out. And I'll also make sure that folks online have that as well. Oh, look, I have a comment here on Facebook, actually, from Paul Williams. He said his first huge name, this is going back to in the intro here, his first huge name that he worked with was Chick Corea. He and Gary Burton. He shows up in a flannel shirt and stocking cap. His tech sent him a 10-page rider as to prep the piano, not a Steinway. Worked 3 days to make it perfect. He took off his stocking cap and played for maybe 20 seconds, turned to me and said, "It's perfect." Was that, by the way, part of your experience with Chick Corea? Wayne, like, what was your experience in tuning for him?
My first tuning, the promoter called me. He says, "I just received the rider. And it's all about you, right on top of the rider. It's all about you and the piano. And they can cancel the show if they're not happy with the piano." So they're making all these demands. And I've never seen this before. So
do you have to like hide brown M&Ms in certain parts of the piano?
they wanted a pound. They wanted the pound. They wanted to hear you do a pound tuning. They wanted certain things to be done. And then. Do
you know what's interesting about this whole concept of a pound tuning? Right. I've heard about it a few times. I don't think I've ever heard of a piano technician calling it a pound tuning, right?
They called it pound tuning.
Yeah, I feel like it's a little rumor that's went around among musicians, like, ask for the pound tuning. Yeah, that'll make them sweat, you know.
All I knew that they wanted you to pound the crap out of it, that it wasn't going to pop out. That's what I sort of got. But what happened was, when I did the tuning for Chick, he said, "Okay, I'm going to get a chair for you, and you're going to sit beside me at the concert." On stage. I said, "On stage?" He says, "Yeah."
That's awesome.
I says, "I'm not doing that." Right? I'm not doing that. It's going to be okay. He says, "Oh, you better make sure you're there where I can see you then, because I'm just going to get you to come over here." So I think he's had maybe some bad experiences over the years.
Right.
That's why this writer ended up on this contract.
Sure. Yeah. Now, if that were me, I would have said, "Sure, I'll sit next to you as long as I get to take a solo." And that would have been where he'd be like, "All right, please leave. I'm hiring somebody else."
I had George Winston has a writer like that, you know, where he's 10 pages.
Interesting stuff. Cool. All right. Well, we digress slightly here. So, you know, you found your way, Megan, and by the way, we never got your official full name. I put it as the label for your video here, but it's Megan Marie Warren, correct?
Yeah.
Okay, great. Yeah, so you found your way to North Bennett Street. It seemed like a good fit. You applied, you found some way to get some financial aid. How many folks are in your cohort What's that experience like? Are you engaging and interacting a lot? Is everybody kind of working independently? What other kind of backgrounds are people bringing to the table? I'm curious about that.
My classmates are amazing. I don't know if it's kind of luck that we all ended up, you don't know who you're going to be put with when you get into the program. But everybody has been like really lovely and really supportive. There were a couple people who were had some tuning experience under their belt. I know a couple people who were working like kind of exclusively with ETDs and again, I don't want to speak on anyone's behalf, but I think that they were drawn to the aural component of North Bennett Street School because we learn orally and like we haven't done anything really. Well, that's not true, but we don't like right now we're just tuning the temperament with ETDs. And then actually when we come back after Thanksgiving, we're going to learn how to do an aural temperament. But their focus is really on, teaching us how to tune orally. Yeah, there were a couple of folks who I think were interested in coming for that reason. It kind of runs the whole spectrum. There are some people like me, I had never held a tuning hammer in my life and never turned a tuning pin. I had no experience at all. And, there are other people who had been working and came to school with their own tuning hammers and, there's a lot of people who have experienced as pianists, and there's some people who are like classically trained. There's some people who don't really play much at all. I think pretty well everybody in my class though has some sort of musical knowledge or background, which I think has been really helpful. I have a lot of respect for people that come into this without knowing what an interval is. It's just, that's mind-blowing to me.
Right. Well, I was going to say coming into it without having held a piano tuning hammer too, like that's its own thing, right? We actually have we just brought on 2 new people on our team in New York, Amy and Peter. Now, Peter had been doing that sort of similarly. He kind of picked up the skills himself and had doing it for about a year or so. But yeah, Amy was a musician, a singer. I could tell she had great pitch because she was a beautiful singer and could do all sorts of, wonderful things with her voice. So she must have great pitch. But yeah, never held a piano tuning hammer before. And I was like, all right, like I guess what I'm saying is this big leap of faith, right? To say, I haven't held the tool of this trade yet, and I'm going to invest this money and I'm going to jump in and I'm going to get in there with both feet. But I think from my perspective, totally fine to make that decision. But I can think from your perspective, it might have been a little bit like, what am I doing? Maybe you thought about, I need to maybe get some more experience before I join in. Like, how did you think about that? Did you think, I'm going to get the best experience from the start, so I'm going to start fresh with no experience? Or did you think about, maybe I'll try to pick some things up beforehand? What was your thought process there?
Well, to be honest, I didn't really have a ton of time between I applied in February of 2022 and I just started in September. At the time I applied, I was working full-time at a call center and also part-time as a producer. I was doing some stuff through this website called Air Gigs, which is like people hire you virtually to do a job specific thing. So I was really busy. And I mean, it's interesting that you bring up that leap of faith thing, because you're totally right. It could have been something that I don't know, I didn't like working with the hammer or whatever, but so
just to interject there, Amy literally asked you, thinking about whether or not to join, our team. And she literally said, I don't see a lot of women piano tuners. She was like, I'm trying to figure out why that is. And she said, I'm a little, female. Do you think I'm strong enough, to manipulate the hammer and do what you need to do? I mean, I don't have any empirical information around that. I said, yeah, I think you'll be fine. Right. One of the best piano tech
members are women now.
What's that?
Between 15 and 20% of the guild members are now women.
That's great. Yeah, and I mean, what I thought of for her in responding to that question, Sally Phillips is probably one of the best piano technicians in the industry and we've had her participate and teach, and she's well respected, and she's kind of this petite, small woman. I was like, okay, if she can do it, you're good. It should be fine. But yeah.
Well, yeah, I mean, I was fortunate. There were like a couple of the technicians that I reached out to. There's a technician here in Ottawa. Her first name is Barb. I can't remember her last name. Or in Ontario. I think she's based around Ottawa. And she was one of the first people I reached out to. And she, I think she's been working for 30 years. Like she told me about her experience and her career and all that stuff. And there was another younger woman that I reached to named Sarah. Again, I'm so bad with these last names. I should have looked them over before I came on. But again, it was like Sarah didn't like mention anything about any sort of like physical limitations or anything. She just told me about her experience, and it was great. I mean, obviously at North Bennett Street School, the department head is a woman. My instructor, Emily Townsend, is a woman and a petite woman. And one of the, we did piano tilting last week, and that I actually had seen someone in the program post about that on Instagram last year. And when I saw it, I was like, oh my God, I'd never be able to do that, because I don't consider myself a very strong person. But Emily Townsend is this, like a petite woman, and she like fully tilted the piano with no hesitation. It was just like, it's really cool to see that stuff. So that honestly wasn't even in my mind. I was thinking a little bit about the wear and tear, because I had heard a lot about, technicians who have to retire early and have a lot of like physical issues and stuff. So that was something that I was thinking about. And thankfully at North Bennett Street, they talk a lot about that and about how to approach tuning and working with your body in like a healthy way, which is really awesome. But I hadn't even thought about like any sort of physical strength limitation. I guess I was lucky in that way to have all these women that I could look up to.
That's great. Yeah. Scott Johnson says 4 of the 7 regional VPs at the PTG are currently women. So that's a majority, actually. So great to see women in leadership as well. And also it's great to have you here on the program. And we do try to represent women in Piano Technicians Master Classes and Piano Tech Radio Hour. And it's always good when people step forward, because, it's one thing to be a woman and be involved. It's another one to take a leadership role. I wouldn't consider this a huge leadership role, but it takes some sort of leadership, intuition, and willingness and ability to come on and talk in front of a bunch of people and put yourself out there. So it's much appreciated. So this is great. It's great to see you getting involved. It's great to see you have a lot of sort of examples and mentors and folks you can look up to. I ask this question often of the people that want to work with our team in New York. And, you don't always have a clear answer, but it's good to kind of see, where do you see this going long term? Like, do you have a vision of where you're going to be in 5 years or 10 years? Or, what's the most romantic vision of what it's like? What's the kind of the clearest path that you could see? What are you thinking?
Well, I mean, it changes the more I learn about the field and the work. I've thought about everything from a concert tech, and also, I really look up to Wayne, and hearing him talk and knowing his work, that seems really exciting to me. And then there's also times when I'm just like, I would be happy just having building a nice local client base and going into people's homes. And I like working with people. That was one of the things that I really liked about music production was, trying to kind of translate what people were saying, which I think is a pretty important part of when you're working with clients and trying to work with musicians and trying to understand exactly what they're going for. That aspect of it is really appealing to me. I would love to, at some point, do some rebuilding work and kind of get into that field. That's a bit of a dream. Again, I don't know like how I would get into that. I haven't really thought about the logistics of it because I can't do the second year at
Right.
North Bend Street. But the idea of having a shop like this is like a dream. And I don't know, to be honest, I have just like I've loved every aspect of it that I've encountered in my
Right.
recent journey. So I really don't know.
Yeah. Well, you'll find your niche, and it'll
Yeah.
find you as well. Yeah, and those are all interesting aspects to consider. I think the idea of putting together a shop and doing that kind of work, I'm sure as Wayne will attest, it's kind of like, I think I don't know. So I think Wayne, you're among the few, the proud, that like has a shop, right? And actually does work in it and pulls things together. Because I think sometimes, especially where I was in New York City, living there, trying to maintain a shop, like trying to even just rent the space, right? And then actually take on the work and estimate what it's going to be like, and not be working for 50 cents an hour when you look back and see like the time you invested in a project. Where, how are you at in your kind of shop journey, Wayne? And like, would you recommend it as a path to kind of get a shop together, do rebuilding, do this kind of work? What are your thoughts on that?
Well, when I first got into the rebuilding, when I first started, I lived in a townhouse. And I put an ad in Yellow Pages at the time, 1986. And lo and behold, I got a phone call. Someone wanted me to refinish their piano. And I said, okay. And which I never refinished a piano before, but I could sort of fix and do anything. So I went and bought an Apollo low pressure spray system. I went to a place in Toronto called Gaudi, bought all the strippers, everything I needed. And I went at it. And I quoted way too low, but I wanted to learn, and had the customer come over and looked, and she was really happy with the way it looked, and they got finished. So it was one of those things where that customer gave me the opportunity to actually get started in my first job in the shop, which was refinishing. And then I learned about water-based lacquers and learned about fisheye and all the other technical things and touch up and everything else. And then what was really helpful was the people at Gaudi in Toronto. They were really good. They had these staff that were helping with changing jets on the spray system and viscosities and all that. So it's something that and then I got into learning how to do touch-up repairs, touch-up refinishing. So I bought a whole kit for that. So that's how I got started in the very, very beginning.
Mm-hmm.
And
so it sounds like the
evolved
shop
from there, that
Right.
the shop got bigger, but then the only way the pianos could go in and out were through the flight of stairs. And they couldn't get a grand down there, so that's when we moved to our first house, which was a one-car garage. And I had a little shop there and worked there for maybe 10 years, and then on to another place, and then on here. But I bought this house because this house had a walk-up basement, which was a showroom. It had a sizable furnace room, which acted as a second temporary shop. And then, but this garage here, when I did the class, I think last year I did a tour. This is I can't remember the size of the garage, but basic two-car garage. And it took me quite a while to get it organized. And everything's portable. So it's just, I explained to Megan when she first arrived about how I configured the shop. And, yeah, it kind of, it does evolve, right?
Mhm. It sounds like also almost like the nature of the shop was informed by whatever jobs you got, right? It's probably one of those things where it's like, okay, you bought a sprayer because you got a refinishing job, you buy a drill press because you need that for this job, and
yeah,
and your shop grows just because of the nature of the work that you're getting and people are willing to pay for, right?
yes, yeah.
Yeah.
But I am into small workspaces too, because there is some pretty amazing things you can do with one of these sheds you buy at Lowe's or Home Depot. 10 by 8 by 10, 10 by 15, or whatever the sizes are. You can put a pretty incredible little shop, micro shop, so there's anything is possible, right?
Yeah.
Even to do action work. If you can't do get a grand piano, well, at least you can get an upright in the house, but doing action work, replacing hammers, taking the action back to the customer's home. Right. So it just
Yeah.
depends on how you're going to transport the actions, and you're just trying to make the right fit.
I was just speaking of like different sheds and things. I was just on it's a website called autonomous.ai. They sell standing desks. But the reason I'm bringing it up is that I was there. Yeah, here it is. I'll do a quick screen share on this actually. I mean, there's all kinds of stuff like this these days, but you can take a look. So this company sells standing desks, but all of a sudden they're selling basically like these small outbuildings, Okay, so for $14,000, you can get this building and just pop it on your property or whatever, right? And so, like you said, there's some interesting things that you can do in that light, to set up a quick shop, or have a nice space for what you want. And I'm sure if you could probably build your own structure for less, but yeah, it's interesting. So I have a comment here I wanted to cut in with as well, just to kind of keep the interaction going here. So Lyle Hiorns said, there's a big perk in this profession, choosing what aspect of piano work you want to focus on. Do excellent work every day and you will have those choices. So we touched upon it, but maybe it's an interesting thing to explore more deeply, a little bit of Wayne's perspective, maybe a little bit of your curiosity, Megan, like what aspects can you focus on? Because that's one thing that I've also been trying to help new piano technicians with. There's certainly aspects, like there's folks in the industry now that, well, they just make hammers too. Like that's a thing. You can make piano tuning hammers. You can install key tops, right? You can do action, rebuilding for folks as like an outsourced job. There's all sorts of different things like hammer, like getting a set of hammers for someone and making sure they're bored appropriately. There's these places where you can get in a niche. And I think that's a great direction to go, especially if you notice that everybody's asking for that and nobody's doing it, right? Because that basically means there's demand there. You can basically charge whatever you want and you can make a good living. And also you can build up a system. Oh, everybody's asking for, key recovering. Oh, I'll be the local key recovering person. I'll set up a little system. I'll make it really efficient. And I can make it, cost effective and still profitable for me, stuff like that. So, well, first of all, Megan, again, you're sort of new to everything. Any things that you've seen that people focus on that might be of interest to you? You mentioned, hey, I'll just be a local tuner. Hey, I'll get into rebuilding. Anything else that you've noticed that could be of interest?
Well, I mean, to be honest, like, I think, like I mentioned, one of the biggest, one of the most appealing things about entering into this field was using my ears. I really like doing that. I can imagine that after you've tuned your 10,000th piano, that maybe it might be hard to kind of find excitement in that aspect of it. Maybe, I don't know. So I don't really know, like the workshop stuff especially is like, that's completely brand new to me. I have like zero experience with woodworking of any kind. And like, the stuff that we've learned at school is really cool. And I didn't know if I was going to have like an affinity for it or whatever. And I don't know. I mean, there's something that I also looked at that I don't think that they do a little bit in second year at North Bennett Street, as far as I know, but that is refinishing. I know that there's like not a lot of people that do that, and there's not a lot of people that do that well, I guess. So
that's definitely something over and over again. Like, if you're just like a tuner and you just want to tune and do your basic repairs, that comes up every once in a while, right? I see it over and over again. It comes up, but nobody's has the skill. Like, oh, you got a chip, you got a crack or whatever. And it's like, I don't know, like you have to learn how to do it. I don't think it doesn't take that long, right, to get the skills, but you have to make it an intention to do it. And I think, again, yeah, like you said, the local people who are good at that, they just get the work, right? Because they don't want to change their focus, right, from what their bread and butter is. The other thing that you mentioned that I think is really interesting, being someone who enjoys using their ear, is voicing.
Right, yeah.
I'm also of the opinion that, like, because we have these ETDs, right? And it is, relatively easy for anyone to get out there and tune the pianos and do a pretty good job. The tuning is almost just like your basic skill. But if you can do voicing, I feel like voicing today is like the tuning of yesterday, right? It's like not a lot of people really know how to do it right. And if you could do it right, you're actually a real tuner at that point. And so I think that could be an interesting direction for you. Because again, it's another thing where there's a certain segment of probably the majority of the piano tuner population who's like, I kind of get what voicing is. I don't know. I don't feel comfortable. I don't know if I would want to stick a needle in a hammer. I don't know if I want to figure out how to do this or that. But man, you get the better clients, because the better clients always understand it. Like the concert musicians, the folks with a writer 10 pages long, they know what voicing's all about and they can appreciate it. And if you have a good ear, and some good mechanical skills, you could pull it off.
That's interesting. We had this acoustician come in, Chris Storch, and he came in and did a guest, like a guest speaker class for us, and talked a lot about not necessarily voicing, but like treating the room, and how the like there's so many different variables in the room alone. Yeah, I found a lot of that stuff really intriguing, and I didn't really consider the voicing thing, I guess because we also haven't really covered it much in school yet. But I know like there's the Bechstein, the course in Germany. I know a couple of people that have done that, and that seems really interesting.
I mean, it's just one of those things where, I mean, again, I think that a piano tuning in the future will just include voicing. Like that's what it will be. The high end of it is just tuning and voicing. They go together, because basically all you're doing is you want to make the piano sound good. Right. And there's so much, sometimes it's 50, 30, at least 20% more that you can do by doing voicing to make it actually sound good. Wayne, do you have any thoughts on like the niches in the piano industry that are interesting to get into? Anything where you're like, oh, I wish somebody did that because I always need that. Any thoughts on that?
So I guess I noticed that the rebuilding in Toronto used to be quite a thing, but a lot of the shops has closed up. So I'm getting a bit more work. I'm getting away from tuning uprights. I'm going to be happy to give work to Megan when she's back. I'm having a bit of a rotator cuff issue on uprights, so I'm happy to hand those off. And but niches. Here's the thing. So Meg, we were looking at a piano, my next project downstairs, and I told her that I found a guy that does key tops, and he is out in Kitchener. We kind of meet halfway. I take it out there. He does the key tops for me. He does also rebushing, but the reason I use him because he's quite reasonable, and I can go out and work for one day, and I can pay him the money to do that job, which would take me maybe 2 or 3 days. So it just makes sense. Okay, well, I'm just going to go and tune 2 or 3 pianos, and I'll just give him the money, and I can go work the second or third day. But meanwhile, it would take me quite a while to do that. So I think that the one thing for me was niches was just a matter of I spent a lot of time going to Piano Technicians Guild seminars, any classes I could go to. When you show an interest, people will help you, right? So that's what I had found. So I wanted to get into voicing, and I got a lot of training from Japanese technicians on that. And it's a matter of, I think, yeah, being able to do sort of some quick or adjustments or regulation on piano. Some people don't realize that the grand piano is not really the touch is not even. So it's a matter of going through, being able to analyze it quickly, figuring out maybe if I can make 45 minutes of adjustments, maybe do a little bit of ProTech on key components, making fine adjustments. The customer comes back and goes, wow, it's amazing. So I think these little, and that kind of, I get more work from word of mouth like that. So I think the voicing is an aspect, like you're saying, tuning and voicing. There was a really well-known tuner years ago that in Toronto, but he did not voice. If you needed voicing, you had to go get the other guy. So he was at the tuner and the other guy was the voicer.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Yeah, and we have quite a bit of content here on voicing in our member area, which I'm really glad about, right? Because we've got several different perspectives, and I think when it really comes down to it, is just trying things out, right, and having a chance to practice and get better. We're going to say something, Megan?
Yeah, I was just gonna ask if you still do any refinishing stuff.
No,
Mm.
no, not anymore. I was thinking about doing the chicory downstairs, but it's just it's a messy job to strip.
Right,
It's just, it's awful. It's the chemicals are bad. So no, I have found a good refinisher that I work with, and he's quite reasonable. And so it's but I mean, if I had to, I could do that. So, but I did learn to do French polishing because I've made 2 guitars. And I just wanted to mention that you know this, but I don't think Megan knows that at one point I wanted to learn about making guitars. I found a luthier in Toronto who was willing to teach me. So I went every Wednesday, and I would arrive at his shop at 9 and I worked till 3. And that's what I did every Wednesday for a year. But then I would book my first tuning at 4 o'clock in the afternoon, and I would work up to 7 o'clock. So
Wow.
I did that for a year.
Wow.
And then the following year, I found a luthier in Chelsea, Quebec, a famous classical luthier named Serge Dion. And I went there for summer, and we were going to trade off work. I was going to do work on his piano, and he was going to teach me how to build a guitar in 5 weeks.
Wow.
So I did that. So it's
Cool.
yeah, that was about 10 years ago, but it was like amazing.
Mm.
So there's different spins on this technology that you can go into different areas, and but he taught me French polishing.
Wow.
So it
Interesting.
was amazing that.
Yeah.
That's cool.
There's always a lot to learn from other instruments. My son has he's taking cello lessons, and he's almost 5. So cello lessons at this age are really just kind of bow holding exercises because he can hardly press the strings. So he's got these songs where he holds the bow and they kind of get his hand strength together. But he does have a little cello, and hot cross buns and all this stuff. But it's funny because I showed up to his lesson, and I noticed that the cello was out of tune. And so I kind of just picking it up, and I play a couple piano keys, and I'm turning the pegs, and the teacher said, do you know how to tune a cello? And I said, no, but I know how to tune a piano. And he's like, I tune the cello. Okay. Like, I tune the cello, like, and I'm thinking, yeah, but I know how to tune the piano, whatever. Like, he just does that because it's a 5-year-old. Right. But he proceeds to show me, you don't use the pegs to tune the cello. There's these little sort of knobs that are underneath the bridge, and that's where you do the fine tuning. You only use those pegs to kind of do the rough tuning, right? So anyways, it's just fascinating, to your point, Wayne, all the things you can learn from exploring other instruments, even things you think you understand, there's new realms to explore. All right, so we have about like 5 minutes left. I think one of the things I wanted to ask earlier, which I want to see if we can dive into a little bit, just because I think it's interesting. So before we started, I heard you guys chit-chatting, and Meg was like, oh yeah, like I'm here, like I have so many questions, right? Like, so your relationship maybe is changing a little bit, right? Because at first, you encountered Wayne, he was like, I don't know if I have time for any mentorship. You went off to North Bennett Street. Maybe there's an opportunity, at least here and there, for you guys to connect. And yeah, so like, what do you have? Do you have something planned for today? Like, you're going to be chit chatting after this session and doing some like Q&A, or like, I'm sure there's some openness around what your relationship is moving forward, but any thoughts on that?
Yeah, we're gonna get into tuning hammers. I'm gonna get all my tuning hammers out and we're gonna weigh them. And I'm gonna see what she has, and I'm gonna tell her my stories on all the different hammers. And then why I use some of the hammers that I use now. Because when I first got into tuning, I just had your standard adjustable extension. And then after that, I got a Japanese hammer, and then I learned about other hammers, and then I got custom hammers made, and then I got the Fujin. And so it's like, yeah, it's just like there's a variety, and really searching for the right tool that works for you. And so we're going to talk about tuning hammers, and we're going to talk about oral tuning, because I tune orally. I use these, and but I have that class I did for Peter. I had some techniques for him to try, and he called me back just yesterday and said he was able to save a half hour on his time. So little things that we can do along the way to, improve our efficiency of speed. And I focused on the bookkeeping of tuning pins. When you're tuning, is keeping track of where you are, because you can get lost and you're tuning and you're on the wrong string, and so it happens to us all the time. So it's a matter of trying to stay focused, but having the right tools, and also not overdoing it, because I mean, as you know, I've had the surgeries on my hands, 2 and 3, and rotator cuff issues. So now I'm having to really be careful more of, but I went crazy years ago. And, so I wasn't really cognitive of, I could develop these issues. So we're going to talk about that.
I've also got a notepad in my phone of all the questions I've been collecting like over the past couple of months that I want to, when I get in person with Wayne, I want to ask him about. And, like we were talking a little bit before, like Canadian specific questions and stuff, right? Because a lot of all of the history and the experience that I've had has been based in America with American companies, and asking about millimeters versus inches and all that stuff. So I've got a full notepad on my phone.
Awesome.
Yeah, they're teaching in Imperial at North Bennett.
Yeah,
So
they do some millimeters as well, but the inches stuff is just 3/4 of a 16th. I don't know.
Yeah, that's interesting, the differences in Canadian and American and sort of United States culture. So quick question on that note, what do you call that like yellow orange cheese that kind of comes wrapped in plastic?
American cheese.
You call it American cheese?
Or Kraft slices.
You call it Kraft slices?
we call it craft slices, yeah.
All right. I heard a rumor that it was that in Canada they call it Canadian cheese.
I've never heard that.
No, I've not heard that.
You never heard that? Okay,
No,
all
I've
right.
not heard that.
All right. Rumor dispelled.
That's funny.
Yeah.
All right, nice. Okay, well, I think that they'll probably do it for today in terms of the session, because we usually try to keep it to about an hour. But I think I appreciate you, Wayne, Wayne brought up the idea of us having this session. I think it was a great idea. And so just to remind folks who are here today, we put a link in the chat if you want to attend the Tuning Pin Symposium with Larry Lobel next week. That'll be next Saturday, but earlier in the day. So you can click the link to sign up for that, and there's still a discount on registration. Any final words or parting advice from either of you, Megan or Wayne, before I do our outro?
I just hope to hear from Megan maybe 3 or 4 months from now, and from Boston, and so that'd be kind of interesting.
I'm just I'm really appreciative of techs like Wayne and people that are so willing to help, and some of the other techs that I mentioned, like Barb and Sarah, and I've had a couple of people say, any tuning questions or any questions at all, just reach out to me, and that has been invaluable. And it's like, it's so helpful to know that there are people that, you know, like I said, like Wayne, that I really look up to, that are willing to answer all these questions and talk to me about his experience. And you know, I'm thankful to you, Ethan, for having me on here, and everybody in the chat who's been you know, chatting and asking questions and talking about your experience and stuff. I mean, I've been blessed to be surrounded and to have people be so helpful. It's just really lovely, and I appreciate it a lot.
Well, we appreciate having you here. And I hope that I took care of everything in that 10-page rider that you guys sent me about joining this session. I tried to take care of all the details.
I think there's some green M&Ms in there still, so
Okay. All right. Sorry about that. All right. I'll read our outro and then we'll sign off. We've reached the end of another musical journey here at Piano Tech Radio Hour. Thanks to everyone for joining us, including Megan and Wayne. As always, we're brought to you by Piano Technicians Masterclasses, cutting edge instruction from piano industry masters without leaving your home. If you joined us today by signing up for only this session individually, you kind of found it in a wayward path, you can make your life more convenient. You can subscribe to Piano Tech Radio Hour at $16 a month. And for that, you'll get the recording of today's session in our member area. You'll also get automatic registration for each week's new session, so you don't have to remember to sign up. You can go to pianotechniciansmasterclass.com/PTRH-direct access. We put that link in the chat, so it's easy for you to click on and register. And that's about it for today. We'll see you all again next week. Again, remember to sign up for Larry's tuning pin session, and happy Thanksgiving. All right. Thanks a lot, guys.